In chapter 238, we see Yuji make his entrance into Shinjuku for the final showdown against Sukuna. But if it's not obvious, instead of his normal appendages, he's now sporting a couple of mutated Piccolo arms. Now, upon first impressions, I thought that maybe this was a new ability Yuji learned during his blood manipulation training with Choso, in between the time Gojo's release from the prison realm and his fight with Sukuna. However, it is revealed in chapter 269 that Yuji's Piccolo arms are actually cursed tools that were given to him by Yuta. Now, you would think that since the main character of JJK, who suddenly shows up in the story with a drastically different appearance, that information regarding this sudden change would be slowly leaked out in the 29 chapters that they appear in. Now, not only have I double-checked or triple-checked, but I have quadruple-checked this entire arc to see if any information has been leaked out in regards to these cursed tools. And with full confidence, I can say that there's nothing. So with absolutely no information to go off of, we're going to try and answer the questions of what are they, what do they do, and where did they come from. This is Yuji's Cursed Tools, sort of, explained. Okay, so what do we actually know about Yuji's arm gauntlets? Well, for one, they are cursed tools that were given to him by Yuta. And two, his main motivation for wearing them in the first place is to hide the evidence of his additional missing finger from Sukuna. Which, spoiler alert, was to trick Sukuna into thinking Yuta copied his cleave technique by eating his remaining finger, when actually it was so Nobara could come back from the land of the dead and use her resonance technique on the remaining finger that was stored away in a hidden location, aka the Shiromaru Dam Fishway. So in order to hide this fact for as long as possible, Yuji needed to wear a material that could withstand not only hand-to-hand combat with Sukuna, but also his cleave and dismantle cursed techniques as well, which is the reason why Yuji couldn't wear normal gloves that you could pick up at your local hardware store. And Maki actually asks Yuta this very question in chapter 269. But the reality is that wearing any kind of modern protection, whether it's made from cloth, leather, steel, or Kevlar, would instantly be torn to shreds by Sukuna's brute force. And considering these cursed tool gauntlets remained intact for 28 chapters of non-stop hand-to-hand combat and cursed techniques, it gives us an idea of just how strong these materials are. If we take a closer look at the cursed tools, we can see that the hand and forearm regions are covered with either an interwoven tendon and muscle-like structure, or a strong hide similar to various animals you would see in the wild, like rhinos, armadillos, or crocodiles. And considering Yuji can still maintain full dexterity in his hands by being able to form a fist or raise individual fingers, I would say this unknown material is very flexible and offers little to no resistance to allow Yuji to fight as he normally would, with the wrist and outer forearm being protected by a more rigid ivory-colored material. Now, given the color alone, my first instinct is to call this material bone. However, unless we're talking about dragon bones from Skyrim, I don't picture a simple piece of calcified tissue standing up to this kind of punishment. I mean, on pure strength alone, Sukuna is able to withstand multiple full-powered punches from Gojo, which has been said to make normal sorcerers vomit. He can rip buildings apart and even block the Split Soul Katana with his bare hands. Which, by the way, the Split Soul Katana's ability is to bypass most, if not all, physical resistance and cut directly at the soul. And the dude also has 4 arms, so what I'm trying to say is that he's really strong. However, it does resemble the same material that constructed Mahito's instant spirit body of distorted killing form, or the patch of bone/scales that guards the right side of Sukuna's face. And we must also keep in mind Yuji's handguards are cursed tools. So it's possible that this was once a normal piece of bone that has been hardened and enhanced from the prolonged exposure to curse energy. And if you want more detail on how this process could work, you can check out my other video on this channel, where I do an in-depth dive into the basics of cursed tools and how they're created. But regardless of whatever materials Yuji's gauntlets are made of, the more important question is, what do they actually do? And I have 3 theories on this topic, but we'll start in order of most likely to complete fantasy, with the first theory being basic reinforcement, meaning that by equipping this cursed tool, it provides the user with a lightweight but incredibly durable armor. Similar to the various styles of armor humans have adorned throughout our history, these gauntlets simply reinforce and protect the user's bare hands and forearms from getting damaged in battle. But unlike leather, plate, or chainmail from medieval times, these gauntlets would be closer to bio-armor, considering they are made from an unknown type of material. I mean, what other material can you think of that can stretch and bend the way our hands and arms do, while at the same time being able to withstand the force of a full-power Sukuna, who I believe scales to city block level in terms of strength. Now, as for my second theory, we need to dip into the realm of fantasy MMORPGs, and this is by far my favorite theory because I'm a huge fan of the Warcraft and Elder Scrolls series, although this scenario is highly unlikely. And if you're not a fan of the MMORPG genre, let me clarify what I mean by this. When you loot a chest or the last boss of a dungeon in either Final Fantasy, RuneScape, Neverwinter, or one of the other 5 million RPGs that exist nowadays, more often than not, you will receive a piece of gear. And depending on the level of content you are doing, that piece of gear will typically contain an enhancement or bonus in the form of a static buff to your character's abilities or attributes. These buffs usually come in the form of a numerical value such as a +1 to your intellect, strength, or agility, and remain active on your character for as long as they wear that piece of gear. So it's possible that this same system also applies to Yujis gauntlets, granting him not only an increase in defense like we discussed in the first theory, but also a small boost to his physical attributes. However, as fun as this theory sounds, I have zero evidence to back this up. My only reasoning for this line of thinking stems from the fact that Yuji is able to hold his own in hand-to-hand combat against Sukuna for, 30-ish chapters, when in the past, Yuji couldn't even lay a finger on Sukuna in his weakest form. As demonstrated in chapter 257, Yuji can be seen gripping a concrete pillar that is roughly the same size as he is, and proceeds to throw it like a baseball. Now, it's demonstrated early on in JJK that even in his base form, Yuji is very strong, stronger than your average person. But he's not throw a concrete pillar strong. So it could be that these Curse Tool gauntlets provide a physical boost to bring him to a level that's closer to Sukuna. But this idea is very weak and highly flawed because, as we know during the Shibuya arc, Yuji goes through a sort of soft awakening during his fight against Mahito, when he adopts that whole cog mentality. And prior to the final Shinjuku Showdown arc, Yuji undergoes replacement training with Choso, Kusakabe, and Yuta, where he learns not only reverse curse technique and blood manipulation, but shadow style simple domain as well. And if we look at the first page of chapter 259, you can see Choso, Kamo, and Yuji all training together. So it's safe to assume that in addition to his rigorous study of curse techniques, he also got more experience in hand-to-hand combat. Plus, if we combine this training with the experience he gained during the Culling games, it would explain how he's able to go head-to-head with Sukuna, and is not the result of the Curse Tool gauntlets. And for my final theory, we need to look outward to other popular animes and mangas. Now, this is just pure fanfiction at this point, but similar to weapons in Kaiju number 8 or the Imperial arms from Akame ga Kill, Yuji's gauntlets could be just one piece from an entire set of armor, where scattered out throughout the rest of the world exist 6 other pieces of this cursed tool that, when combined, transforms the user into a sorcerer monster or super soldier. It's kind of the same principle as the Chaos Emeralds from Sonic, where each individual piece grants a unique power or ability, and if you collect all 7, a powerful transformation is then bestowed upon you. And I guess I could have used the Infinity Stones for this example, but I don't know. I'm kind of burnt out on Marvel at the moment, so I decided to show Sonic some love. But again, this theory is borderline insane, and I only included it in this video because I thought it was a neat idea. But in the 1 in a million chance that they ever use this idea in a future JJK spinoff, you heard it here first. Okay, so now we need to discuss how Yuta would have acquired this curse tool in order to give it to Yuji. And to do this, we need to rewind the story back to chapter 178, during the height of the Culling games, where we can see Rika displaying a large assortment of cursed tools inside of her personal pocket dimension, or whatever you want to call it. Well, I can't confirm if all of these weapons are cursed tools, I'm just assuming that they are. In the cursed tool, or weapon, Yuta picks is a singular reinforced gauntlet, which looks eerily similar to the pair of gauntlets that he gave Yuji. Now, since this panel has not been officially colorized and has yet to appear in the anime at the time of making this video, I can't 100% confirm the physical composition that construct this cursed tool. I mean, it could be Bucky's metal arm for all I know, but looking at its design, I would say that it's closer to the bio-armor material that we discussed in the previous section. However, since Yuta and Rika's shared ability is copy, this arm could also be a copied curse technique in physical form, similar to Charles Bernard's G-War staff, and not a curse tool. And again, you can check out my previous video for more information on this process. But as far as I know, Yuta can only activate one copied curse technique at a time. He can't overlap two copied curse techniques. He must first deactivate one technique before using another. But he can accomplish this in quick succession given his massive reserves of cursed energy. And considering he uses cursed speech on the very next page while the arm is still active, I'm leaning towards the idea that this is indeed a cursed tool. Okay, so where am I going with all of this? Well, for the sake of this argument, let's just say that I am correct in labeling this arm as a cursed tool, and that it shares the same or similar composition as Yuji's gauntlets. This tells me that while they are a unique curse tool, they are not a one-of-one rarity, and that other weapons of this type do exist out in the world. However, given the relevant information from the manga, Yuta is the only sorcerer in Japan in possession of this type of cursed tool. Which, if you ask me, is kind of strange, because even if we don't know all of the abilities these gauntlets possess, what we do know is that at bare minimum they give the user a slight boost in defense to their appendages, and a reduced risk of dismemberment, with little to no restriction to the user's movements. Which you would think that a curse tool of this caliber would be a standard issue among sorcerers, because contrary to belief, creating a curse tool is not a difficult or complicated process. Pretty much any cursed user or cursed spirits who possesses cursed energy that, if given a long enough time, can eventually produce a cursed tool. So this leads me to believe that the method for obtaining or creating these types of cursed tools is unknown among the three big families, and that they probably originate from outside of Japan. And although it's extremely rare, sorcerers do exist outside of Japan. The evidence for this can be seen in chapter 145, when Yuta explains that he traveled overseas to Africa with Miguel in search of a cursed tool that disrupts and cancels cursed techniques, the Black Rope. But considering it takes decades to produce a completed black rope, the last of it was used up after Miguel's fight with Gojo during the night parade of 100 demons. So instead of returning to Tokyo empty-handed, this is where I believe Yuta acquired the cursed tool gauntlets, either directly from Miguel's clan or by using a process that they taught him. And if we zoom in on this panel, you will notice that this village elder has one normal looking arm and one that kind of resembles the pattern on Yuji's gauntlets. So I don't know, it's highly unlikely, but not impossible. Anyway, that's enough speculation and imagination from me. I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on this topic in the comments down below. And if this video cured your boredom even momentarily, feel free to throw a like and subscribe my way. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.